Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have Ed on the phone, and he's good?
Ed is on the phone, we just need a,
Teams. I don't need a motion for the workshop.
Full
right?
participation by
On
Mr.
the
Tinker.
workshop?
I would say yes,
Okay, go ahead.
I second, make it.
under exceptional circumstances.
So we have a motion on the floor for allowing, Tinko to fully participate in the meeting remotely to the section 6 circumstances, and then I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll start with the presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, Board. Russ Flyer, Real Estate Econometrics, your assessment methodology consultant. After 4 workshops, I think it's been, and a number of meetings and calls and everything else, we finally put together the assessment methodology in written form. Basically, it's everything we had discussed, everything that you had asked me to take a look at. I have some additional stuff which I'll go over, which is the additional memo that was asked at the last meeting. But for the most part, this report encapsulated everything that we had talked about, how we would handle the methodology going forward. Now, I'm not sure how you want me to go through it. I mean, I don't want to read it page by page, but pretty much, you know, again, pretty much the the report, we did it based on the roadways, we did it based on the water management system, we did it based on the parks and recreation portion of it, and the admin portion of it. So ultimately, I guess the most important part is, first of all, let me ask you, how do you want me to proceed? Do you want me to go through it in detail again, or?
Do you want to go one by one with questions? But
I just have some questions.
So I think that's better, so we don't have to redo everything. We'll go one by one with questions, and
Okay,
would that be easier?
that works
Okay, so
perfect.
since Carol, you're prepared with your question?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with Carol.
Okay, if we go to the very end of your report, oops,
here we go.
we go to the very end of the report, page 24, where
Yes,
there are the 2 tables with Pelican and with Gateway.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And maybe I missed it somewhere in all the workshops and whatever, but why do we have single family and multifamily as 2 separate categories? And the reason why I'm asking it is because after attending a number of homeowner association meetings and others that do an assessment, their philosophy is if you purchase a unit, then you have the same rights as anybody else. It doesn't matter how big the unit is, how much it costs, as opposed to somebody else's. Doesn't matter if it's a freestanding house or a condominium. Everybody pays the same amount because they each have the same right to the assets or the amenities or whatever the fee is being charged for. And just as a philosophy, shouldn't this be the same? Shouldn't Pelican have 2,498 units, whether it's a house, whether it's a condo, whether it's an apartment, whether it's where the kind doesn't matter, because maybe the person who lives there now doesn't use anything, but that doesn't mean that the next person that comes and buys it or whatever may use something. So did I miss a discussion or something about why we have 2 different categories? Why isn't it just housing unit as opposed to single family and multifamily?
I understand that. Initially, when we went through the analysis, we've had single family and multifamily. They are different in size of units, they're different in size of the lots, which relates to water management. So what we're doing is proving the benefit in reality of that. So the benefit is a little bit different from a multifamily unit than a single family unit. And that is in relation, when we first started out, if you recall, single family has a trip generation of like 9.6, and multifamily has a trip generation of like 4.8 4.8 or 4.7, something along that line. Then, as we were going through the analysis, we realized that within the gate, within especially an age-restricted community, that we have one trip generation and it didn't matter what kind of unit you had in there.
Right.
So if you look at that last page, you'll see the road assessments are the same, both for single family and multifamily. The parks are the same because it was determined at the 0.1 or 0.15 level versus a 1. The administration is the same because everybody received a 1. The difference in this case is in the water management. And because what I did is I took all of the single family units, added them up, and then I took that percentage of the acreage, and then I took the multifamily and added them up, and the percent of that acreage, and then the golf course, and added that up, and that percentage of the acreage. And that's where the differentiation between the two is. And we did the same thing at Gateway.
No, I know what you did. I'm just saying philosophically, why can't we treat every unit equal to every other unit?
Well, and Tony.
And you can still do pervious and impervious surfaces.
But we're not measuring what we call the true benefit received. And I'll kind of rely on Tony with this one, because if everybody had the same assessment, then it's not an assessment anymore, then it becomes a tax.
If I may briefly, just briefly.
Yeah.
The legal test in Florida, the test in Florida for a valid non-ed warm special assessment is outlined by the case law and the statutes. Is outlined by the case law and the statutes. And I'm not familiar with the condominium statutes or the association statutes, but it doesn't mean that whatever process is utilized in the declaration of condominium or the declaration of covenants that helps establish a homeowners or property owners association is the same test that's utilized as required by the courts in Florida and the statutes in Florida dealing with governmental non-ed warm special assessments. So I think they're two different animals. And again, Russ has outlined the leanability test, the test for validity in the state of Florida. And I don't necessarily believe that they apply to associations and condominium declarations. Again, these are unique, because the key issue in Florida is to non-ed warm special assessments. If you meet the test that Russ has outlined, then it is not a tax. And under Florida law, a governmental body can only impose a tax if authorized by law. So if you're not authorized to approve a tax, if you don't have a referendum in the case of a CDD to utilize ad valorem tax, and you want to use non-ad valorem special assessments for funding purposes, then you need to comply with the tests the courts have established to establish a valid non-ad valorem special assessment, so it is not a tax, which would be illegal and could not be collected. Is that a fair statement, Russ?
Yes,
So-
Does it sum up nicely?
yes, thank you.
Yes.
So we can't just say it's a housing unit, a 1.
Well, and again,
Everybody is a 1.
in the history, you have economists, experts, financial advisors in the field who are skilled in analyzing the properties and making a determination as to what benefit accrues to the properties from various facilities and or services. And then to make an apportionment of the benefits that accrue and then the cost associated with those benefits is utilizing the leanability test that Russ has mentioned and outlined in the Florida courts. He's mentioned about that many, many times. That has to be utilized. You can't just say they are the same.
Everybody gets a 1.
Okay. All right, so basically it's Florida statutes of some sort
Case law.
that we will always refer to you.
No, please. Yeah,
Thank you,
Florida-
I'm not an
That can
attorney.
happen.
Yeah, Florida case law.
Okay.
And the statutes that may codify some of the case law will indicate what's necessary to have a valid non-ad valorem special assessment to avoid it being a tax.
Okay, so then, Russ, if you go to the very end there, the variance, it's $29 and some odd cents, this is very small print, and $60, so about double. Okay, what is the primary factor in this that doubles it for the multifamily when in the Gateway area, the multifamily actually goes down from what the single family is. So why in one instance would the variance double and why in the other instance does it go down?
Well, there's
What's
enough,
the factor?
there are a number of factors in there. Last year, if you recall, when we did, remember, we're comparing two separate methodologies right now.
Right.
That's what we're doing. And in the old methodology, you had your assessment, and we did the same thing. We didn't really have roads in there at that point because that was under administration, and everything else was under administration. In this case, it's primarily water management in this case, and the number of units. So there's a lot of factors that went into that, why one went up and one went down. And you really can't compare the two because they're two separate. You know, I'd have to run through all the numbers again to give you an exactly, well, this one went up and this one went down, and this is the reason why, to try and compare the two. So that's how the numbers came out.
So it isn't one particular factor.
No, it's a number of different
You know,
factors. Number of
water-
units, the water management can be different. There's,
Because basically, everything but water management is the same
correct,
for each one. So I have to assume that's in the water management
calculation,
area, calculation
yes.
of some sort.
And,
So what is,
well, the other part of that too would be, is the trip generation, because remember, we
in water management?
well, no, just when you look at trip generation, because the golf course is included in there as a part of that too. So the golf course trip generation was calculated, you know, a little differently because we did it by holes this time versus what I did before was I took an average of a unit in Pelican Preserve, and then I would measure the square footage of all the buildings that are at the golf course. So that changed.
Okay.
So there was a number of, the trip generation changed, the golf
I'm
course.
talking about between single family and multifamily.
No, I understand,
I
but
know
you
you're
gotta
talking
count, but you
about
gotta
the
count the
golf
golf course in there too.
Why?
Because they generated less trips. So if you look at, based on the way we calculate, actually, they
But everything is the same except underwater management.
in this year, correct, and you're comparing it to last year's, and last year's was totally different the way we measured it. And I have to go through a detailed analysis of seeing why each one did that. Because we went item by item, and then when you put them together, that's how it came out.
Okay, well then, speaking of golf courses, going down Pelican's golf course and going down to Gateways.
Mm-hmm.
One is 18 holes, Gateways is 18 holes, Pelicans is 27 holes. I understand the difference there. So shouldn't Pelican be basically 50% more than Gateway?
They're totally, remember last
Or-
year, they were measured differently. The Pelican Reserve units, when they did it under the administrative portion of their budget, was 1 unit per acre. But we brought that down now, that's coming way down. So because we did it, we were getting consistent between the Gateway Golf Course and the Pelican Reserve Golf Course. They were, up until last year, they were up and including last year, they were measured differently. But now they're being measured the same because
Those
they're,
that were measured the same this year using last year's criteria.
I'm sorry,
Those you took last year's methodology of computing your golf course
right,
and applied the way we did it in Pelican to Gateway.
they were different.
Well, I'm saying, normalize them, but don't normalize them based on the way we did Gateway. Normalize them based on the way we did it for Pelican. You got a choice. We had 2 choices last year, the Pelican way, the Gateway way. And I'm hearing that you changed everything to the Gateway way. And
No,
what
it's
I'm asking, what I'm asking is, if you evaluated the Gateway 18 holes in the same manner that you evaluated the Pelican.
When I did the new methodology?
Yeah.
No,
Well, I know you didn't.
no,
but I'm
because,
asking
no,
why couldn't
what I did, because, and Gateway's measured differently this year too. It's not done based on the measure of units and the square footage and that sort of thing. It's done on the holes.
Say that a little slower.
Just real quick, I think the question is, did you apply the same methodology for Pelican as Gateway this year? Or how you measure and calculate? Is it the same?
It is the same this year.
It's the
yes.
same this year.
Okay, if it is the same, why is the difference of 9 holes more than double? Why is Pelican more than double? 50% I can understand, 27 holes, 18. But the Gateway Golf Course comes out at what, 101,000 for 24, 25, and Pelican is 358.
And remember that we dropped,
Yeah, keep telling me about the remember. I don't remember, and I'm asking for.
I know you
it's
don't, because
illogical to me,
you and I talked about this,
and I've never
Yeah.
agreed with it.
and we have talked about it. Remember you said,
I said we talked, I've never agreed. I don't understand.
it was abnormally high because they had 258 units. Now they're coming down to 27.
What if you took whatever number of units it was for Gateway and brought it up to whatever that 258 would be, and then computed?
We could do that, but to me, it wasn't at that point, we had two different ones, and I wanted to get them consistent. Can we do
The
that?
difference is, Russ, if you're taking 27 holes versus 18, what's the same is 18 to 18. The difference is the extra 9 holes.
Oh, no, you can't possibly, I would agree with that, but you can't possibly take 18 of Pelican and 18 of Gateway, and let's just say they're both the same, 101,000. And then we add 9 more holes, and now it jumps up to 300.
That's what you're saying, though.
That's what I'm
Right, so
saying.
that's what Bob is saying, is that if you're comparing apples to apples, 18 to 27, there's a 9 difference, you can do the percentage.
50%.
That should, right, 50%, so there should,
I totally
but he's
understand.
saying, why isn't that the case?
And
That's
I
what we need to
keep
explain.
saying, the unit numbers changed, the way we measured them changed, and now they're consistent on both parts.
I can't wrap my head around that. I'm at a 50% differential.
And I can't either.
There's a 50% differential between 27 and 18.
You
If
said
that
you
number-
did it completely on holes.
Did it now on holes,
On
yes,
holes, right.
yes.
So why is the end number for Pelican so much higher than the end number for Gateway?
Because their per unit number came way down, because it was not as many units. It was measured on an acreage, on a per acre basis versus what we did at Gateway.
So we're talking about we're talking about acres now.
It's a
Yeah.
blend, we're talking about blend, so.
So
actually,
it's,
it's not even-
instead of holes to holes, you're talking about,
A blend of items, including holes to holes, including acreage, including size of the lot, so so I guess I guess Bob's question was, and it's not just the size of the holes and how.
it's not
many
just the
holes there
hole
are.
count.
No, there's a
It's
lot
not.
of
Okay, so
factors
the
that went
answer is
into all
no,
of
Bob.
this, that's correct.
It's a blend of items, and at the end, when we total the blends, that's why you see the difference.
And what I'm suggesting, Claudia, is there other blending opportunities in formulation that would treat one more favorable than the other? We've been given one thing.
What you're asking is there another way to calculate it that's cheaper? For the cost,
Or
or the
more-
numbers down?
or-
That's what, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're asking.
It's not
Well, it really
cheaper.
isn't cheaper. Are they closer? I don't care.
Even,
If-
even. I
So
think
can
cheaper
I-
is not, because
can I-
somebody's gonna pay for it. So
If
the money,
Gateway
the
went up-
cost is the cost.
Yeah, if
So we're
Gateway
looking
went
for
up.
something that is.
May
yeah.
I chime in?
Hold on, one quick question. The square footage of Gateway's 18 holes versus the square footage of Pelican's 27. What is?
The square footage had, and I don't have the
I know,
number
I'm
right
sure you
in
don't.
front of me, but it's the size of the buildings and the
Right.
maintenance
So it's not
facility
just
and all that.
50% increase?
Correct.
Okay,
Can I chime in?
yeah.
So if you look at the table in front of you, it's very easy to see the difference. So on
It
the,
is?
it is,
Yeah.
on the gate, this is the Pelican side. Again, you all chose the methodology per category, right? You chose the ITE for the roads, you chose the acreage for the waterway management, you chose a 0.15
For parks,
for parks, so
but
Then
we,
that-
but we didn't charge, wait a minute, but we didn't agree and change on the assessment methodology for administration. That we wanted in silos, but it's not.
correct.
Okay,
So,
so
but
don't say it's all the same.
But you're asking how to get the number lower. Well, they're paying this, here's the big difference. They're paying $96,000 into the roadway assessment because they have 27 holes. You look down here to this, and part of it is the budget's higher in Pelican for roadways, is it not?
Yeah, because we got a lot more roads.
Correct. So on the Gateway side, they're only paying 23,000 into roads. If you look at the waterway, Gateway's paying 42, they're paying 142.
100.
Acreage, that goes back to the acreage component. Parks and Rec, they're paying the
So
same.
that math
How
seems
can-
to, now that calculates if you look at it across the board.
Yes, and that's how you get that $358,000 number. So they're paying $5,300 into this Pelican admin, not Gateway admin, Pelican admin, and then into the greater Gateway admin, they're paying $5,800. So they have more, it's a 6,000, what is this your number? Is it-
6192.
That's the big difference.
I know what the numbers calculate, what I can't wrap my head in. If, let me put it another way. If a true, accurate, fair measurement is the 358.65, if you took 33 1/3% out of that,
You have to take that out of your budget.
I'm just saying, if you take that number and say that's a good, robust, standalone number, then I wouldn't have an argument if the Gateway golf course cost was 33% and a third lower than that. But to have it down to 25%.
The budgets are vastly different. That's
Well,
the key.
there's, figures don't lie, but liars figure. Okay, here's a classic case where, from a very simplistic point of view, 18 is at $100,000 and 27 is at 256. Now, however we justify those various components, something's screwed up there, folks. It ain't right. It can't possibly be right. If it's based on holes.
But what he's saying is not based on the holes. That's what he said first, but it's a blend of items. And I guess what the question would help you would be, what are the exact items that you're using
I
to
would like to
calculate
walk through
that?
it.
So that I think would be more of an appropriate question to do together as much understanding. And what he mentioned was roadways were one, so I would like to know as well, like what are all the items that,
Just what's the calculation form?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get to that number? What are the inputs?
If you go to table 13 on page 19. Your water management acres as a percentage of the total, the golf course is 18% at Pelican Preserve. At Gateway, it's 5.81%.
There you go.
That's based on the number of acres that took the lakes out and everything else out. That's actual golf course acreage.
So it's so much small. It's like an executive 18.
No, it's just, that's the acres. That's how it came out. That's how they measured.
You got more water hazards over there.
Well, no,
Well, I mean,
the
no.
water was taken out of it, but there's preserves and that was all taken out. That's actual golf course acreage as it was measured.
So then your fairways are longer.
But
Putting greens are longer.
something is wrong, and I guess I don't
Yeah,
understand the difference. Something that says 42,000 is good for 18 acres, 18 holes. And for 27 holes, it's 142. Am I the only one that doesn't see that balance? There ought to be a relationship there. And I don't have the expertise to delve into it. But Russ, I would expect that you would, other than just say, well, that's the way I did it. I don't know if there's alternative ways to do it. That's why we're gonna have somebody look at it. But this one just screams at me and says something's wrong.
Like I said, the acreage is huge. It's more of a water management component. It's making more on that side. The water management
Let me
component,
ask you something else. Let's go a different way. Half of the holes in Pelican, half of those, or 9 of the holes in Pelican are in Basin 6. Did you take them out to deal with that as the same water component as the holes that are on the flowway 1 and 2? Maybe that's a different way to approach this.
I've lost you because I didn't
We're
take
talking about
basin.
water management,
I
right?
didn't separate Basin 6.
Well, I think we should, because that's not contributing to the flowway, this thing you keep getting back to, water management. The only one that's paying for Basin 6 is Pelican. But Pelican is also paying for flowway 1, flowway 2, flowway 3, et cetera. Correct? I'm asking.
I'm asking engineer.
Okay. Well, you know that Basin 6 doesn't go to the flowway. I don't need to ask any engineer that. That's a fact. Basin 6 doesn't go to the flowway.
It goes directly into directly into the 6 Mile Cypress.
Yes.
Okay.
But not through anything that's related to what the district maintains. It doesn't, it never meets with what's between Colonial and Botanica and the I-75 and any of those things.
And vice versa.
So, therefore, based on that alone and the fact that this water management is so impactful, I would suggest we take the ponds and the acreage of the golf course that goes to Basin 6 and pull them out.
Well, the ponds aren't included in that acreage. No, it's
Whatever,
just,
but they're there. But we're talking about water management, right? We're talking about water that hits grass and goes somewhere. Correct?
so do you have a separate budget for Basin 6 versus the other one, so I
What we
can
do
measure?
here, we have a differential that recognizes Basin 6 is different.
Do you have a budget for it? So I can see Basin
We've never had
6?
to do it before. But it's simple enough to take the holes that don't impact the flowway, which I think is 9 of them, and take them out of the calculation.
Out of the
Then you see how
flowway
much goes in
calculation.
alignment.
Out of the flowway calculation.
Out of the water management calculation.
But it's gonna have its own water management calculation.
Because you're separating them.
We
You're
have its
separating.
own right now, it's a $12,000 fee we're
But
paying.
he's saying you have to budget for the,
So we budget. If that has an impact, I would like to understand that, and I'd like the board to at least look at that, because that kind of then makes sense to me. That I could probably adopt.
But it still is gonna be there, it's just gonna be separated and the amount won't change, it will just be listed
But
specifically
Well,
as
the
an
amounts have
item.
changed significantly.
Bob said he doesn't know if the amounts will change or not.
Yeah, I believe they would.
Yes, Tony?
Just a question, is Pelican Reserve Boulevard in Basin 6 or elsewhere?
Partial and partial.
It's partial and
Part
partial.
of it is.
Okay. And from the standpoint of Russ, in your analysis, is it important that Pelican Reserve Boulevard not be flooded at any portion or component?
Yes, that's
And it benefits all the properties to the extent?
The Pelican Reserve Boulevard that is in Basin 6 is never flooded. The Pelican Reserve Boulevard that goes to 1 and 2 has.
But no, I'm just talking about from the
The
standpoint
benefit,
of
he's
a
trying to get
benefit.
an understanding of the
Okay.
benefit, the
If
reason
it
why.
floods at the entrance to Pelican Reserve Boulevard, that may be in a different basin, but all the other properties, including those in Basin 6, could not access the properties. That's what I'm saying, that's an analysis from engineers and/or Russ to look at.
So just so
That's all.
I'm clear, because I think I understand what you're asking. So you've gone through and you've had the multiple categories, you've selected that all of the roadway assessments are going to be done through the ITE. You've gone through and you said waterway management is going to be via acreage. You've gone through Parks and Rec and said 0.15 for Pelican and those parcels over there. What else am I missing? And then everybody gets a 1. So what you're asking is to have the golf course differ from those methodologies.
If that's what,
Both
Why we have such a
both golf
major-
courses differ from those methodologies.
if that's what this major cost differential is, if that's the difference, waterway management, then yeah, then I think it's appropriate
Okay.
that we look at that. Now, I'm still not 100%, I'm not even 10% into having the administration and landscaping and roads together. I still want those as separate categories. And yet we've said that repeatedly here, and I still don't see it. It's like I didn't speak at all, and we keep coming back with what we were given in the past.
But I think,
I want them to be separate silos.
but I think the consensus, that's your want, but then I think the consensus and direction that this board has given to him was not that. So while
No,
what-
Claudius, yeah. Whenever we brought this up, he'll say, "We'll look at it." I've never seen it.
That's what the
I've never
memo
once
was.
said we're not gonna look at it.
Did you look at the memo I sent along with the report today?
I have not digested that, I will tell you.
That's all your
Because it didn't come
answers.
through last weekend when I first did this, and I've been out of the
It
hospital.
all went out.
The first one that went out,
Yeah, it was there. It was
I didn't have to
there.
catch it. Well, I didn't have to catch
Okay, my next question is,
it. Well, let's get this resolved. Have we
Okay.
decided as a board that we're not interested in looking at that at all?
But would you like him to
I
go
would
through?
like-
would
Well,
you-
let's go through Kara's questions, and then when you go to Bob's, but hold on that question, so at least, because it's 2:30. Go ahead.
One good thing, this exercise, and the exercise that Bob is requesting, with looking at the golf course differently, pulling out Basin 6. What, can you say what the potential impact of that could be at this point? I mean, is it even more, that's my point, like, but we're gonna go through all this work,
I
and
agree.
you're gonna save $10,000.
Well, that's what it worked.
Or it's gonna be apples to apples, and we're getting down to the, kind of late in the game to be.
Well, I'm not on the deadline, Doug. I understand. But if we don't get this resolved today, we don't get it resolved tomorrow. But I would really like to have the questions answered before I'm asked about it. Otherwise, why do I show up? It's gonna be 3-2, I may as well go home.
Well, but at some point, we do have to have some trust in the calculations
I
of our
don't-
assessment
I don't-
methodology and,
I don't-
you know, because I guarantee you, we couldn't all at this board articulate all the formulas and calculations and the justifications for everything that he does. That's why we hire, you know, a specialist to come in and do this stuff. But again, I'm not arguing,
I
your request isn't valid.
understand.
I just want to, I don't want to nitpick through this thing because we've changed methodologies.
But the nitpick
It
is a
just seems to me
significant
that
nitpick.
I can't wrap my hand around the fact that Pelican Golf Course is paying 3 times as much as Gateway Golf Course.
Well, and
it's only 50% bigger.
and to answer that
27
question,
holes as
Russ said
opposed
that
to
it is not,
18
it's not just based on holes, there's more to it. So therefore, as long as we can see what that calculation is, I don't disagree with,
And
it's
I-
But when
not
I
based
come
on.
down to the numbers,
Yeah.
I have a tough time figuring out why Pelican's going to be paying 3 times as much as Gateway Golf.
I'm not disputing your request at all. I'm just,
Okay.
I completely understand.
Okay, I'll write this down for a follow-up at the end when we're done. And then, what is your other question?
Okay, Pelican Preservables, I'm sorry.
Let me point something out. I want you to look at the, this year's assessment, and then you look at last year's assessment. I'm sorry, I'm on that page 24, right?
Back home front.
Golf course is at 358 and 101, and then, wait a minute. I gotta go find that last assessment per unit. I gotta find last year's assessment, because last year's assessment was even more a differential between the golf courses. If you recall, you and I had that
We've had a lot of
discussion
conversation, I didn't agree with it
a
then.
long time ago.
Didn't agree with it then.
You didn't agree that it was that,
I agree, it was a great differential, but you told me that
Okay,
time.
so then this is
That
an
the
improvement
methodologies were
from
different.
what we
But it's
have.
not.
It's not good enough. Okay, so we will recognize that this is an improvement for the difference between the 2 golf courses on the current methodology, but while it's an improvement, it's not good enough. I guess that's what we're saying, okay?
Well,
Right?
I wouldn't characterize it that way, because it
Well,
was.
this is not feeling, this is a fact, right? So
That's
if there's a fact, if there's a number difference between the current methodology between the 2 golf courses now, and the percentage is lower now between those 2, that is, that's.
Okay, I would characterize lower as 10%, and it's nowhere near 10%. It's always been skewed. One of the very first things I wrote to Chelsea when she came on is I'd like to understand, and I didn't fight it.
Okay.
Okay, Pelican also has a dedicated preserve area. Of, obviously, nothing's built there, it's impervious.
that's,
Very good.
yeah,
Thank you.
that would be.
Does Pelican get any kind of a credit for that?
In terms of,
Well, you said you take each of the housing plots and you determine how much is pervious and impervious.
how much they impacted, correct?
Correct. But you also have this preserve area.
Correct.
Which is right in the middle.
Correct.
Which would affect the total amount of pervious,
I take,
impervious.
for the pervious and
Pervious.
impervious acreage is non-district. And those are district properties, or they're
The
district properties.
preserve is a district property.
Yeah, they're the water management system. I can't include the water management system in the calculation. The calculation is how much are each of those properties impacting the water management system. That's what the calculation is. Then we find out that percentage, and we divide that into the budget amount, and it's the budget. Then I get it on a per unit basis from that point. So those aren't even included in that. They're not included in the calculation.
For the record, Ed Tinkle has dropped off.
So what's the acreage, I just prompted another thought. How much conservation area acres do we have in Pelican? We got 22 of them. I think it's 22.
I couldn't tell you
They
offhand.
do you know how many we have over
In
here in
Gateway?
Gateway?
Quite a bit. I don't
It
have
is
the
quite a
number.
bit? Okay.
Yeah, we have quite a bit over here.
So as a percentage of the community, or they go through the same filter?
I'd have to confirm, but
Is that the green on this map that's in here?
I think so.
This is
That's the
page
engineer's report?
6, page 6, I think.
Yeah, of the engineer's report.
Well, one thing it would be an easy ask, Chelsea, what do we pay over here for conservation management? Dollar figure.
About the same as Falcon.
Okay, even though we're twice the homes. Oh, no.
Oh,
75.
I thought you were talking
Sorry.
total contract.
Yeah, no, she's talking, you were talking about, he wants the
For
total, But she's talking about units, so units per units is very similar. The total will be more if we have more land or
Well,
more
that's what I would
acreage, and vice
expect.
versa, yeah.
So over here with 60% of the homes, there's a dollar figure. And with Pelican with 33% of the homes, whatever it is, we have a dollar, annual dollar amount. Our annual dollar is a pretty significant chunk, and I'm asking what it is every year.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a map in front of you, so you could see for a picture wise, the green is conservation area for the Gateway versus the Pelican stuff, so
Okay.
this would.
Well, I didn't realize you had such a big area in Basin 5, because I never hear about it.
Yeah.
You know, like in Basin 3, you have next to nothing.
So,
Okay, then down to the gateway assessment, back to page 24, the chart, Arborwood.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did they go down so much?
Because they were treated just like C5 being added to Gateway, just like the commercial being added to Gateway. They, their road assessment, let's take a look here. Their road assessment was the same as C5, but they went down, hang on a minute, where is it? From water management. They, first of all, they went down by Parks and Rec, because they were treated as a .15 versus
Same as
a 1.
Pelican, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as
We treated them the same
Pelican.
as Pelican, so they had a reduction.
Correct. They were affected by the Rule 6 in commercial.
Yep, primarily.
Okay, but we don't have Rule 6 anymore. They were treated once,
No, no, no.
like by
No.
Rule 6, but we don't have Rule 6 anymore.
We changed them to mirror Pelican because of, we gave them, instead of paying the full amount that Gateway pays, they're only paying 1.5, which is
Point
0.15, which is the same amount that the board decided that Pelican would pay. Because they,
Oh, that's
And it
right.
is,
so there was
So
a
we
reduction,
reduced
because
it.
we agreed on that
Okay.
reduction.
and it's the same amount as commercial is paying, and the same amount as C5 is paying,
Okay,
0.15.
all the way down at the bottom. This is my last question, I'm sorry.
You can have it when you want.
C5, that $357.20, is that per unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Because my understanding is one, so 168 times 357.20, that's gonna be one bill to the one owner, because those are rental properties.
Correct,
So, and only one person owns all of C5.
correct. But he owns 168 units.
Okay, so,
So we treat him as a unit, just as if, you know, it was a multifamily or a single-family unit. They're a unit. They're on the tax roll that we get from the county as 168 individual units.
In other words, he's looking at use versus ownership. Right,
Correct.
okay,
I think,
so that person's gonna get one bill for all of this.
Yes, if he, well, there's actually, I think
Okay.
there's two owners identified on those properties. So we'll be going to each of them based on the number of units they have. That's
Okay.
our.
So they got a $60,000 bill.
Yeah. Get my attention. Okay, thank you.
All right. Bob?
Well, I was waiting, I thought we were gonna go through the differences between having the silos, a silo for roads, a silo for landscaping. I'm okay with water, and I'm okay with safety and security. When I say I'm okay with the way it's presented. I haven't seen the impact of having the admin in each of those silos. That's what I thought I was gonna be hearing today.
Which is that email that you were talking about, that you sent it out that he didn't
The memo.
read? The memo, okay. So if you can, I was gonna say.
do you have a copy of it in front of you
I
that you requested as part of the printing?
didn't ask for any
You
printing.
didn't ask for any printing? Okay.
Yeah, just print that to Bob, and then,
is it in the workshop book?
Yes.
I'll give him my copy.
All right, thank you.
and then besides that, any additional questions? So you think Carol will be able to.
No, I would like to know the answer, of course, to the
Well, we're gonna get the memo. but-
C6.
Okay.
Until I look at it, I got a question for that. But was the overall impact, that you've done the calculations,
Mhm.
what was the overall impact?
The overall impact was that,
Including separation of landscaping from road.
So
That's
you
the
can
first
memo,
part.
So that
Okay.
he can,
You know-
report to him. Do you wanna give him Hannah so he can?
I've got it.
okay, the roadway assessment came down because the landscaping wasn't included in that. However, the landscape assessment went up on a per unit basis. And the reason being is the only way I could measure the landscaping, remember, now we were measuring the landscaping by trip generation, remember? Because it was included in the roadway costs, and the costs were done by ITE rates. I pulled it out. Therefore, just the roadways were measured by ITE. The landscaping, the only way that I know to measure that is on a per unit basis, just like you're doing it at admin, just like you're doing any other ones. It's a one unit equal. So everybody would pay the same amount for the landscaping. So when I do that, and I put, that's how I calculated
What
it.
page are we on?
I'm on page 2 of my memo.
I have the memo pulled up, and I think Tony handed you a hard copy.
Which is page,
I'm looking at table 1, what's table where, so let me look.
Table 1 is the landscape budget, which I pulled out. And then I took the EAUs, the equivalent residential units, by each place. And so what happens now is the landscaping at Gateway is $280 per unit, and at Pelican Reserve, it comes $303 per unit, $304 rounding up. Then you go down to table 2.
Before you leave those two numbers, is in the gateway number, does that have the west side of Tree Line Boulevard? Here's where I'm looking at. When I dealt with the gateway, with the Pelican landscaping budget, everything in Tree Line, all that commercial portion was in the Pelican budget. But what I thought I read here very quickly was that now we only have one side of the road in the median and the other side of the road is someplace else.
Right, so it's like 2/3, 1/3.
So I did read that correctly.
That's correct.
But my original, part of the original request in dealing with landscape was to deal with it as it was in the old way, in the old methodology. So all of that chunk is part of and contained within Pelican.
Mm-hmm. And
We
that's,
didn't do that.
no, I didn't take the 2/3, 1/3 because we were still talking about how we were gonna measure that. If you read mine, I was just giving an example of 2/3, 1/3 based on the thing. I didn't do that. It will change these numbers at the end, but it's not gonna change them significantly.
So moving part of that out of Pelican and now putting it into the gateway,
Right.
that had no financial impact?
No, it'll have a financial impact.
well, that's what I want to see.
I understand, Bob. I'm sorry, Mr. Gepper.
No, it's Bob, I'm worried about it. This isn't adversarial even though it may seem that way. I'm trying to understand.
If you look at the way I did it, the $280 and the $303, you got that per unit?
Yep.
That's before I take the 2/3 and 1/3. So essentially what would happen is you add another 60,000 to Gateway and drop 60,000 out of Pelican Reserve, is what would happen if I did 2/3, 1/3. But before we do that, if you go down to the next line, the roadway assessment with landscaping was 342 and 432. You can see that. The new roadway assessment was 107 and 166.
I haven't gotten to what you just said about the roadway roads.
Table 2.
Table 2, okay, all right.
See the roadway with the landscaping, and that's based on the trip generation that we did before. 342 was Gateway, and Pelican Reserve was 432. When I took the landscaping out of that, so it was just strictly the road costs, which I did on the trip generation, Gateway was 107, Pelican Reserve was 166. Now go back up and you take that landscaping on a per unit basis and bring that into those roadway assessments so you get an idea of what the difference would be. The new assessment at Gateway would be $387 and Pelican Reserve would be $469. So the assessments would go up if I pull the landscaping out. The assessments would go up at Gateway by $45 and $37 by Pelican Reserve. And that's going to be a little bit of a differentiation because we're taking 60,000 and spreading it over, and we're dropping 60,000 off. But it's going to go up either way.
Okay,
Both of them are going to
both
go
go
up.
up.
Correct.
And if the administration admin costs stay within the silos and don't come over here, there's no impact, is what you're saying? We have the admin now in the admin cost, if I understood what we did correctly, under the landscaping and roadway, there's an admin cost to it and not a separate silo.
No, you're talking about salaries and wages.
Yeah, oh,
We don't split.
we didn't split
No.
before, we didn't split before. All the admin costs within a silo were in it, and now they're not.
When it was,
Well, now-
initially, when it was very, very first.
Now administrative is
Just an admin.
Just an
admin.
Other than Parks and Rec, all
So-
admin, less
Yeah.
utilities and Parks and Rec is
Yeah,
in.
roadways
And
and
that was
landscaping.
that was a choice for us to make, to either
Yes.
keep it in a solid, and I'm still back to, I would like to do, at the end of the day, if you kept it like it was, here's the cost, and if you make this change, here's the cost. I would just like to see what that.
So what,
differential-
Russ, what you've determined is, if you siloed it, it would be more.
Correct.
Yeah.
If we separate,
That answers your
if we
question.
separate now,
So at least now you know.
Well, but-
wait a second, wait a
But
second.
then
Let-
hold on a second, David, before we
Not
go
that
there,
easy, I
before
wish
we
it was.
open this box, me personally, the reason why I voted and I agree with the 0.15 a reduction for Parks and Rec, because I looked at all those items. So now we gave Pelican, not formally, but we agreed that we'll give the reduction, and now I know eventually what you're gonna ask is for a reduction on that, because you wouldn't bring it up if it was to raise it more, right?
I don't know what the costs are, Bob. But I
So
think there
then
was a
I will go
benefit.
back when it's time for voting, I'm just gonna make sure it's clear, I will go back on my word, because to me, when I went, because it was meeting you guys halfway, because my goal was always to be fair and even, but if that was what we wanted to apply for benefit on Parks and Recs, I went back and I agreed with lowering and allowing Pelican to be at a lower level, knowing that that was it, point done, I wasn't gonna talk about it anymore, but now if we're gonna go back and start looking at those individual items, then I would like to go back, and so I'm just wanna be very transparent with this
Whatever.
board, that now I may have to rethink that, because that wasn't always the intention, that wasn't brought up to us board from day one. This is
But
why
I've been
we're
asking for
lower.
this since day one. I've been asking since day one that we have 4 silos, and that the cost on those silos were calculated like we did it in the old methodology. The new methodology can do what it has to do as far as that analysis, but the cost shouldn't have to shift because we changed the methodology. It may have, it may not have, I don't know. This tells me there's a little difference. But when the fundamental portion of what I'm looking at is influenced by something I was not, I didn't agree to, and I wasn't aware of. And I'll refer back to the paragraph in the administrative where it says, and this is on page
What page?
29, district staff recommended the salaries, wages, benefits for roadway, water management, parks and recreation be put under administration and removed from the different sides. And what I hired him for, to hear what staff wanted, I hired him to do what was the best for all of us. And that's why we were gonna have 2 different methodologies. We didn't do it, we tried, but that's why. If I wanted staff, I would've just said, hey, staff, just
Well, to be
give
clear,
it to us.
status quo was an option, and this board chose to move all of the money to administration.
No,
As
I
a
disagree with that
majority-
statement. I disagree with that statement, because I've been trying to keep them separate so I can look at the 2. Don't say the board did it.
The board chose
Well,
the,
Well, no, the board
dir-
had discussion, gave direction.
yeah.
And
as
so
to a-
that- and that's what I mentioned
Without
earlier.
making a final decision.
And without having the data, without having the cost.
But
All
that-
I've been trying to do is understand what the cost impact of these decisions.
Mr. Gephardt, can I explain something? Because I know Mrs. Pankow asked me to take a look at the administrative costs. Remember, you said,
Yeah.
let's bring those salaries and wages back over to Pelican Preserve. And when you do that, your assessments go up by $73. Because if you think about it, all those salaries and wages over there are being spread among 7,500 units versus, so when you pull it back, when I did the analysis, it's on page 3 of the memo. I did the analysis for them, and it turned out it goes up almost $73 per unit,
72.96.
$73.
Again, I haven't seen this,
I understand,
and I'm trying to understand.
I understand. I'm just,
But
I'm trying
I
to bring in the
get
pieces so
hair
you
on the
do.
back of my neck standing up when I see statements like that, as staff director. And you're saying you didn't do it, maybe it's one of those great 3-2 votes you have. But I don't, I hear, I'm getting you're frustrated, I see that.
No, no, no.
Well, I'm very frustrated by the whole process. When I look
I was
at,
trying to do the math, Bob, and then I just.
if there wasn't any reason to change, why do you change? If we were happy with the way it was prior to getting rid of Rule 6, and the only impact on Rule 6 was pennies for ponds, a couple of bucks for landscaping and safety and security, why do we do why have we turned all this on? If we'd had this data in the beginning, would we still have voted to repeal Rule 6? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe we would have, maybe we wouldn't. But I'm not comfortable that this has been a level I think there's been hands on the scale, directing Russ to do it a certain way.
And I hope that was not the case, because that was never a direction from the board.
Russ, have you been influenced by staff or anyone on the board?
No, sir. No, sir.
Thank you.
And
Then
that's
why
all
did you
we
put
know.
that statement in here?
It's
Why is
happened.
this a bullet item from you? District staff recommended that the salaries. Why
It was
did-
just,
why
it
did
was,
you do
because
that?
it was a suggestion, I could have taken it out, because the board was the one that
I'm
gave,
trying to get that.
Mr. Gepper, the board was the one that gave me the direction, says, yes, let's go that direction. You could have said no.
Okay, so staff said that to us, and then we.
They made the recommendation and you gave me the
We made a
direction.
blessing, and that's what he worked with.
Correct.
I guess it could have been better stated on the new report.
Is your recommendation, do you want us to consider siloing things?
Yeah, I've always wanted that.
Yeah, so
To
you
not to change.
No, they
the
want their
salary,
assessment.
But I want to see the difference between them.
No,
So
but,
the assessments will go up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
so that's what he's trying to say.
and I want to make sure that you and Carol get what you need, because I want you to be comfortable with this assessment. It's very important. So now you've got the numbers. Do you
And I'd like to
Carol,
have a
you-
little time to go over this, because again, I'll probably bend his ear for a couple hours to make sure I really understand. I don't get a lot out of these meetings, but I do when we go through every single item one at a time. I don't want to take up the whole room's time for that. But yes, I would like to have time to analyze this before I'm voting on it, before we're holding a public meeting on it.
Okay, any other questions besides that you think may be answered to you today?
Well, again, I don't know my question, I haven't read it.
Go
Grab
ahead.
it.
No.
All right. I don't have any, is that one one?
No, he asked that I call him when we get to a regular session.
Okay. So me asked was 3 o'clock, so I wouldn't necessarily.
Can we just do,
one
Russ, can you just do a quick summary of,
of the memo, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
ask. I know we have, would you be able to
Yeah,
do
walk
that?
us through that.
Yeah, because we may be able to, I'm not saying that we can do it in 7 minutes, but we may be able to at least read it out.
What are you looking for? I'm sorry.
Just a summary of your
Just a
memo.
summary of the memo.
You kind of went over the landscaping, but generally just,
Okay, the summary of the memo, again, I was asked for five items. One, separate the landscaping from the roadways. We went over that. Put the salaries and wages back into the Pelican Preserve benefit measurement silos, which I did. And that was the one we just went over, the $72 or $73.
Forgive me. First statement was you separated the landscaping from the roadway.
Correct.
Okay, and the impact of that is?
The impact of that is, if you go to page, which one was it?
table 2.
It was table 2.
Right.
Gateway goes up by $45 a unit, and Pelican Reserve goes up by $37 a unit.
Just by separating them,
Correct.
and nothing went down.
Nothing what?
Nothing has been reduced.
No. No, and remember, the way it was originally measured, it was measured on trip generation. Now you're going on a per unit basis, so it's gonna go up.
It's gonna, yeah, it is.
Do we generate more dollars?
No, it's same dollars. It's
It's
just
just divided.
allocated different.
It's
Then how can they
allocated.
both go up? One, something's gotta go up, something's gotta go down, you know, action
Well,
reaction.
because you're asking on this specific,
Okay, but
roads
this,
and
where
I'll
is the
tell you,
one
I'll
where
tell you what
the-
went down.
you're
Commercial,
asking on
wait a minute.
specific items, so he's telling you this specific item went up on both ends.
I got that,
There will be a point that one may go up and one may go down for Gateway.
and I wanna get to that
And
point,
then there's a
wherever.
point that will both go down, so.
No, but what went down was the commercial. Because their trip generation is high, but now they're treated on a one-to-one basis.
So there's the answer.
There you go.
Commercial one, something had to get out. If the
Yeah,
dollars are the
To make
same-
you go up, the dollars were the same, correct.
Okay, good, got that now. Keep going.
Okay, that was the roadways. Showed the administrative cost line items, and that was in the back, because somebody, you had asked, can we see what the administrative costs were? And that's your appendix A in the back. So that's all the line items that went into administrative costs. Number 4 was the determine landscape outside of the gate and split between Gateway and Pelican Preserve. And I took a stab at that based on the 2/3 and 1/3, not based on the 2/3, 1/3 differential between Gateway and Pelican Preserve, but in Pelican Preserve, I said, I looked at the road measurement and said, hey, it's 1/3 here, and then the median was 1, and then the left side was basically 1. Now, the 2/3, 1/3 is just done on a linear foot. In reality, what we need to do is I need to know what the budget would be for the we had a bunch of alternatives, didn't we? That was, but the roadway on, what it would be on the left side, what it would be in the
See,
median.
that's what I never agreed with separating median and one side versus the other. I wanted it in totality, which is where it's been all along. So it stayed in its totality of all the.
Even higher.
Pelican. Yeah, we've always done that. That's always been Pelican-only budget. It's never been in the Gateway budget.
Right, if I, and I,
But then that would mean the Pelican will be even higher if you do it this way.
Maybe it is. Maybe we're generating a lot more money from the revenue of those commercial properties and all, which no longer come to us.
Well, you wouldn't, because the commercial properties went down. So if you wanna do it your way, Bob, and I think he mentioned this a couple meetings ago, that it will actually go up, and that's like one point that I remember like going over with you, like, it was like a significant increase, if that's how we wanna do it, that's why he separated
The
it.
significant increase I'm saying is the change in the methodology when we have to what we do now.
It's-
Every single thing that I've asked for, but the end result when I hear, oh, well, we did that, you're gonna go up. Well, in the name of God, everything can't go up. Pelican maintained it all before. Pelican taxed them for it, kept it on ad valorem revenue. Pelican did the work. But now, we've got a system where part of it now comes over to Gateway. And now I'm hearing about the 1/3, 2/3.
well,
Every single thing we do, folks, can't be negative.
when you go to,
And you can't go up.
when we
Well,
were,
that's what I
Everything
mean.
can't
To
go
go
up.
up, I agree
And
with that
something's
statement.
gotta go down
But
to
unfortunately-
compensate for it.
What is going
Correct.
up is a lot of Pelican items, but we have to recognize that a lot of items like commercial are going down. So I understand that statement and I agree, not everything can go up in all the different categories, but we have to recognize that while I have no benefit because I have no commercial property, so I'm not thrilled.
You're in the middle of
But,
that.
neither are you, but if we had a room full of commercials, they'll be all supporting because they're happy. So we know not everybody's gonna be happy because the numbers are changing.
And I would submit to you, Flavia, that everybody in the commercial world, I've never once heard one single peep. So if that stays static, it's the same as it was last year, there's not gonna be a peep. Why are we hell-bent to charge residents to the detriment?
Because it's not about we charge residents, it's about the methodologies and what we hire Russ to do.
There we go.
And that's a
Received.
And the
consequence,
old methodology,
No, but
which we
that-
hired them to do,
okay.
worked.
but we, the board, have agreed. So like, we can't, I'm not gonna sit here and go back on what we agreed, because we all know what we agreed. And it's a feeling, to me, it's 100% a feeling versus a fact. The fact is we hire Russ, we may not like it, we may not agree, but we have to understand, I can have my own hat, and I have never had my Gateway hat or my Pelican hat. It's a
Well, I
whole,
disagree with that statement.
I don't see
I've
it,
seen it
that's
too many
fine,
times.
and that's fine.
But I will tell you this, under the old methodology, which came from him too, we did it. And now all of a sudden we changed, we removed Rule 6, and now all other things are looked at.
Because we as a board asked him to do that. Is that the part that is, I mean, I don't know any other ways to say it. We as a board
We talked
have
about Rule 6.
directed, we as a board have directed, and we are required by statute to have him and Tetra Tech work on this. So it's not something that it was a project for any of us. We as a board are required to follow those procedures. If we didn't like Russ, if we didn't trust Russ, then we should have hired Russ. And I think, honestly, it's borderline disrespectful at this point, because he's here to provide us with a document. If we don't agree with the document, we'll challenge the document and we'll understand, but I think there's a lack of truly understanding the document or truly trying to approve mentally that document. But that's what we gave him to do, and he's just providing it to us. Are we all gonna like it? Clearly not,
Let
but
me
the
ask you a
facts are the
different way.
facts.
We had a methodology up till 2025. Right. The only thing I know that really changed was repeal Rule 6. Correct? That was the overriding impetus for having a new methodology. My question is, whatever was happening in that tree line corridor there with commercials or whatever, we had a methodology we used before. If we're changing things related to Rule 6, why do we change that? If it was good enough for 20 years, why is it all of a sudden?
Because we saw challenges, and I think that's a conversation that you may want to take it on side with Tony, and he can go over again and remind you of the challenges that we had with that. And then again, and I remember the
I don't know of any
conversation,
challenges
I
with that.
remember the conversation we had as a board, since we're doing this, and I'm not gonna quote who asked, but one of us asked, well, we're gonna look into we're gonna do everything right, from the beginning to end. The consequences will
We
be,
can't go back and
but
rehash.
we can't rehash that,
We've already-
and that's what
We've had
I.
a hearing, we've made a decision, we have to move forward, we need to address the methodology. If there's questions with the methodology,
And that's what I
bring
said.
them up, get with Russ, but we can't go back and
I'm not
rehash
asking you to go back.
what we did, months ago.
But when the
It's a waste of our
methodology
time. We don't
yields
have, I don't have
something-
time to do it.
When the methodology yields this great differential between the 27 holes and 18, that just raises the flag. If that one is askew, how do I know the road's on?
But that's something that is valid, and I don't disagree, and then once you have time to read the memo that was sent to you, and if you have any questions, then you're gonna reach out to Russ.
Oh,
like
I
you have
absolutely
before,
will.
And then you'll bring it up at the next meeting, look, I agree, I don't agree, or I agree halfway through it, we'll be here.
And the same thing with the Basin 6.
Okay, so those
But
are
all
the,
I keep hearing is justification for what we did. I'm
That's
looking
what- but that's what
for
you were asking.
no, I'm looking for what are the differences and what alternatives might we have? I'm not hearing.
because they're in that memo,
Bob,
that you were
every-
trying, that is that memo that you
Every
didn't
request,
read.
Russ is giving you what you requested and what Carol's requested. I don't know of one instance where
Well, we've been
Carol, you or
requesting-
Bob has requested something that Russ hasn't given to you.
We've
I
been
don't
asking for
understand.
this since
Now,
November.
whether you agree with the direction of the board or not, that's, I
Okay,
understand that.
I'm
And
okay
I'm
with that part.
sympathetic, I'm very sympathetic. But I don't want our residents to think that you guys, representing Pelican, are looking for alternatives and asking questions, and we're not delivering it. I don't think that's the case. I still think you may not agree with everything, but
I'm okay with what I
everything,
don't agree with,
everything
but I don't.
that you've
I'm
asked
not-
for, you've been given. Is
I'm
that not
not
accurate?
Yes,
Yeah,
that is
okay.
accurate.
Thank you.
However, that doesn't mean we can't, just because we're going through a new methodology, doesn't mean we have to change everything. If there was something back in the old methodologies that was working and it was correct, why? That doesn't mean we have to
If there's-
change everything
So here's
that's
my
going on.
answer to that.
You can,
If there is,
Let's-
if there is an alternative that aligns with the methodology calculation, because you can't add 1 and 1 one way and then 1 and 1 another way. If we're going to a methodology and that we're using across the board, now some of the calculations we have, or metrics we have altered, but you can't say, we're going to calculate this one area this way and do it a different way if it's not consistent with the methodology as a whole. And I don't know if I'm saying that articulate.
Okay,
No, it
but
makes
Doug-
sense. It
Let me
makes
ask
sense.
Russ one.
Doug, we might have said, okay, let's look at, we might, as a board, have given direction to Russ to say, okay, let's look at this, this, and this, but let's see what it is, how it comes out. Let's see the actual numbers. Let's not just,
But part of
Make
it,
a decision.
from my position,
In my-
and I'm very sympathetic, I think where we're getting to is, well, I understand you guys don't necessarily agree with, if there's options, here's what I would say. If there's a way you want us to look at something, bring it to the table and let's look
That's what
at
I'm
it.
trying to
But you can't
do.
just say, let's do something different.
Well, no, what I'm
We did the
saying
memo.
is if you computed the roadway and landscape using the old territory, forget the methodology, using that old territory is totally within Pelican. Now, why do we didn't need to change that to adopt it a new thing. That chunk could still be there.
But if he says that you can't do it that way,
Well, no,
for X reason, then
Yeah, but we
we
did
have
it
to
that way
understand
before. Why can't we do it now we did it before?
Because the benefits have changed. Both sides are benefiting from both sets of roadways. You have district roadways. They have district roadways. And what we came up with, if you recall, we found a de minimis. We found the smallest one that everybody paid for on a trip generation basis. Then what we said, okay, the difference between that and what your budget is, and the difference between that and what Gateway's budget is, goes into each of those areas. And then that is determined by the trip generation within those areas. So if you wanted to raise your landscaping, for instance, that doesn't change the base that you're paying for the Gateway roads, or it doesn't change the base of what Gateway's paying for your roads. So what happens is if you raise it, your assessment's gonna go up, but that's your call. And the same thing with Gateway. That's
How does that differ from what we did 2 years ago?
because 2 years ago, you had your own roadways. You had a roadway, actually it was just thrown in under administration, and everybody had a one. And then the golf course was charged a humongous amount. Instead of true trip generation, it was based on a unit basis. So really, that is not a true measurement of roadway
The
generation.
golf course hasn't gone down.
The
Say
assessment,
that, the golf
the
course
calculation, I
has
think
not
that,
gone down. The golf course is still 3 times what it is over here.
You can't compare you're comparing apples to oranges.
I have an argument, I can't compare that. I'm sorry, it just doesn't compare.
What was it, I think the percentage, was it 21% less with the current methodologies and around 27 with the proposed new one?
I think it's something like that.
1% in total? I wouldn't even open my mouth for 1%.
And that's the method I was trying to do. But if you
I
want-
just don't have
Yeah.
the confidence in this. I'm trying to internalize it so I can sell it. I
This,
can't
this
internalize it.
item is also on the regular agenda as well, in case you had any additional.
Okay, so then let's go ahead, no other questions, so let's let's finish the workshop, take a 5-minute recess, and then get back on the regular meeting. That'd be good.
5-minute break?
Is it? what-
And this is gonna be on the regular meeting.
I understand it, but I'll just ask you, is it fair to say that this is still subject? It's not, I'm not gonna read, in the next memo, the board said go forward. And now we're getting ready for
Public hearing.
a public hearing. We're not there yet? Is that a fair statement?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, because I don't know, I can't prevent any one of us from making a motion, so that's a question that I don't have an answer for you. So,
Well, okay.